Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuhu and good morning ma'am. This is Nasrina M. Mukhtar and I will be talking about the first part of the group 5. This is where we talk about the secret annex at its breaking point, where by March 1943 the secret annex had changed completely, where the first months of hiding had moments of excitement, new routines, quiet days, small jokes, and an attempt to make life feel normal. But now, almost a year later, the truth becomes clear that the annex is not an adventure, it is a test of survival. Outside, the war grows more violent, but inside, fear grows heavier. Food becomes harder to find, the adults grow impatient, tired, and easily angered. The walls feel smaller every day. And Anne, who arrived as a lively, talkative 13-year-old, begins to think deeply about the world, her family, and herself. This period of her diary reads like a hidden chapter of history. The silent struggle of 8 people trying to stay alive in a cramped space where every whisper feels dangerous and every day could be their last. And this part of Diaries Anne Frank talks about the rising tension where the world outside is breaking. By late March, the sounds of war become impossible to ignore. Bombs fall closer. Air raids shakes the building. Gunshots echo through Amsterdam. Anne writes that the noise is terrifying, not because it is loud, but because it reminds them how close death really is. And even worse are the announcement, where the Nazis plan to remove all Jews from occupied Europe. And this realization changed Anna, where she begins to understand that hiding is not temporary, it is the only thing keeping them alive. Their helpers struggle as well. Meep faces exhaustion, Mr. Kraler deals with stress and illness, the pressure on them is enormous, and Anne sees how dangerous it is for anyone to help Jews at this point in war. Inside the annex, where tension arises, new visitor downstairs make them freeze in fear. Workers in the warehouse almost notice strange noises. Anne and her mother clash more frequently, where Anne feels judged and misunderstood. And then she begins writing about loneliness, anger, and the desire to be taken seriously. This marks the beginning of Anne's emotional and psychological growth, where where she thinks or about the conflict and the claustrophobia. When people are trapped together, everything feels bigger. This is in the month of May to July 1943. And by May, daily life becomes harsher. Soap runs out, clothes cannot be replaced, food is repetitive, bland, and never enough. The room smell. The summer heat makes the attic suffocating, and privacy becomes impossible for them. And small problems becomes big fights, where Anne observes Mr. Dazzle becomes strict, selfish, and unwilling to share space or food. The Vandans argue loudly about money, cigarettes, and ration coupons. And also, the adults talk over Anne and treat her as a child, which makes her frustrates. It frustrates her deeply. Outside the annex, their helpers face even bigger struggles, where one is one of them is fighting against cancer. Another collapses from exhaustion. Without these helpers, the annex would starve, and Anne realizes how fragile their safety truly is. And then comes one of the scariest moments of 1943 is a burglary in the warehouse. The families hear footsteps, a window breaks, the intruders move closer, they sit in an absolute silence, afraid a single sound will reveal their hiding place. This event shakes everyone, and Anne writes that she feels the annex is no longer just small, it is suffocating. She is tired of what is happening. This is where he fought for this uh, her psychological battle where hope and destruction outside the window on the August to September 1943. And then by August, Anne's world becomes divided into two, which is the physical world small and cramped, and the new word for her is that imagination grows stronger. She begins writing stories and fairy tales. It is her way of escaping the pressure around her. But outside, the world becomes more brutal. Bombs destroy entire neighborhoods, children wander through rubble, air battles takes place right above Amsterdam, and Anne is actually shaken by these stories, and she no longer sees the war as something happening outside. It is a tragedy swallowing the entire city. And inside the annex, mood changes quickly because one day they celebrate a birthday with a tiny cake, and the next day they fall into sadness because a helper is too sick to come. And then Anna begins talking Valerian drops to calm her anxiety. And then late in September, Italy surrendered to the Allies, where for a moment hope returns to the annex. But this hope is fragile because it is a deportation continue, rules tighten, and the danger remains constant. And Anna feels trapped between fear and hope because childhood and adulthood, between childhood and adulthood. And also the emotional maturity, where Anna begins to understand herself by the month of October to November in 1943. In October and November, Anne's diary becomes more reflective. She no longer writes only about the events happening. She writes about what they mean. What does it mean? She looks at herself honestly, like asking herself, why does she argue with her mother? Why does she want independence so badly? Why does she feel older than she actually is? Why does she dream of becoming a writer? So, Anne becomes more aware of her mistakes, her strengths, and her desire to grow. This these entries show her becoming emotionally mature despite being trapped in a situation no young person should ever experience. Imagine she is 13 years old. And meanwhile, the annex continues to struggle, like food shortages worsen again, winter clothes creeps into the rooms, helpers become overwhelmed, adults lose patience more easily. And but something inside Anne changes. Her voice becomes clearer and stronger because she is no longer just surviving. She is observing, understanding, and growing. And her diary turns into the story of a young woman learning about herself in the middle of a world collapsing. This part of the story in the diary of Anne Frank correlates to uh, connects to the real life today. Even though Anne lived in 1943, her experiences feel familiar in our world today, where her feeling of being trapped mirrors about what people felt during pandemics or long periods indoors. Her conflicts with family resemble what many teenagers experience in real life. Her battle with loneliness, anxiety, and emotional pressure is something modern students also understand. And also, her use of writing to cope is like how many people today use journaling, social media, or art to express themselves. And hope for the future reminds us that even in dark times, people still dream, grow, and imagine a better world. And Anne Frank shows that growing up is difficult in normal times, but growing up in hiding during war transforms every small moment into something meaningful.